Hi everyone, this is Faye here from Twilight Crafts, and I'm going to walk you through the scrapbook layouts I made using the Twilight Kit Club monthly subscription kit. And I made several layouts from the kits. I still have loads of stash left over, but I'm just going to walk you through and show you the layouts that I made. So this layout started with the beautiful background paper, and then this is a thickers title from my own stash. It's just a wood effect title, and I took two of the frames from the ephemera pack, a landscape and a square one, and then in the laser cuts you have these beautiful rope picture hanging pieces. So I added those to the top of each of the frames. This quote was one of the product tabs, so I always cut and keep those, and I just snipped it into pieces and arranged it just on the left. And then we have lots of tickets that I scuffed up with a distress tool and then added some brown ink. And then we have lots of these little laser cuts in clusters just around the sides of the photos. And I love these little log pieces, lots of layering here of tickets, the little lantern, the pine cones and the berries. So this next layout has one of the larger frames, one of the log frames as the centerpiece. Again, the pattern paper is in your kit. And then I decided to add some stenciling here. I've got a kind of what I would call like a knitting pattern or a cornrows effect. And then I did some Seth Apter stamping. This is one of our little Seth Apter mini stamps, just in a nice gathered twigs distress oxide to add some texture for the background. The wooden title is from my own stash, but we do stock these online. This is Uniquely Creative, and they have a range of wooden titles and embellishments online. And then I layered again some of the laser cuts and some of the ephemera pieces just around with a laser cut rope piece on that one. And then this next one I absolutely love. Debbie has designed a beautiful acorn stencil in the kit. So you can see in inking the stencil, I took a dinner plate and in pencil I marked my circle, and then I started to stencil the acorn just in a circle here. I used 2 tones of brown ink just to give that 3-dimensional effect, and then I used a lighter brown ink, and then this is a 49er Market Fossil ink, which gives that sort of grey brown effect there. So using a couple of different tones of inks through your stencil really gives it that 3D effect. And then I've got another of the Uniquely Creative wooden titles. I just love these. I did ink that in gathered twigs distress oxide just to make it slightly darker. And then I took some of the laser cuts here and created the sort of green branches at top and bottom here, and then more of the sort of autumnal laser cuts and the log pieces here. The centerpiece is one of those beautiful frames in the embellishment pack, and then I layered up some tickets and some more little laser cuts here, so the frame kind of becomes the centerpiece. And then this layout uses the 6x8 pages that are in the kit. So within the kit you do get some 12x12 background pieces, but you also get some of the 6x8 pattern papers. And so here I took the 2 tree papers, the 6x8 papers that come in the pack. I tore the edges and then I inked that in brown and placed those on the edge. And then top and bottom, I took, again, some of the 6x8 pieces and tore them into strips just to create that top and bottom. And then using that large wooden log frame as a centerpiece, I've got this photograph of the Northern Lights that was actually taken from my back garden here in the UK, which was a really rare sight to see. Beautiful greens and pinks and purples in the sky. And that became the centerpiece another one of those uniquely creative wooden titles inked in brown, and then some of the little laser cuts and ephemera pieces. And you can see just at the top I took some pine cones and some of these little leaves to tuck into the torn inked edges. And then this one was definitely all about a piece of plain white cardstock. And then I had a 12 by 12 hexagon stencil, which is available on the website. And then this was all about inking through that 12 by 12 stencil, the beautiful hexagons. First of all, inking through in 2 tones of Distress Oxide. I think I might have even used 3 tones here, because I've got that sort of grey brown here. Then I've got some Gathered Twigs, I've got some Vintage Photo, and it was all about building up the layers. Once you've stenciled, you then stamp through, once you've inked the stencil, you then stamp through to create that texture. And then I picked a rectangle frame and a square frame for the photos. More of those wooden titles here from Uniquely Creative, inked in brown. And then this background piece, I've done a technique video on our YouTube channel, because that is the Tim Holtz stone embossing folder, which is inked, and I've got a demo of that on the website. And then the final one uses a piece of Basil Shimmers card, and I was just using up the pieces I had left over. So I had some laser cut rope pieces. I had some of these laser cuts that I ran along the bottom, and then I was literally using what I had left. So I've got a 6 by 8 piece here, which I distressed the edges of and then I inked. I picked some 49 and Market film strips from my own stash, and then I just pieced some of the laser cuts and ephemera here just to complete the layout. So I hope you find that little walkthrough useful, and I hope you enjoy using the kit.